The first time I overheard my son-in-law's words, I was standing just outside their bedroom door. "God, your mom's perfume. It's everywhere. It's like that old people smell," he said, his voice sharp and cutting. Then came a laugh, one that felt more like a jab than a joke. "Do you think we can get her to stop wearing it?" I couldn't make out my daughter's response, but whatever it wasn't a defense. Not of her mother, not of the woman who had just brought over 3 homemade meals because Rachel had mentioned she was too busy to cook. Before we dive back in, let us know where you're tuning in from. If this story resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow, I've got something even more special lined up just for you. It was the morning after Rachel's first day as the new CMO of Elevate Tech Solutions, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to shift. The air felt charged with quiet tension. Rachel had called me late the night before, after the board meeting. She was still processing the change, her emotions a mix of excitement and anxiety. But for now, things seemed settled. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. In the world of high-stakes business, I had learned the hard way that nothing stays calm for long. Alex's pride had been wounded the moment his demotion was announced. He hadn't seen it coming. And now, he had to adjust to the reality of his new position. I'd always known that his arrogance ran deep, but I hadn't anticipated just how far he was willing to go to maintain the narrative that he was the injured party. As I sat in my office, sipping my coffee and reviewing property proposals, I thought about the damage control Rachel and I would have to navigate. We had both worked tirelessly to get Elevate to this point. The last thing I wanted was for this to be marred by Alex's desperate attempts to regain control, by any means necessary. It wasn't long before the first indication that trouble was brewing arrived. The phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. "Is this Linda Wilson?" The woman's voice was professional, cool. "Yes, this is Linda. Who's calling?" I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm Carmen Diaz, with the Denver Post. I'm working on a story about allegations against Wilson Holdings regarding predatory investment practices targeting family businesses. I'd like your comment." My heart sank. I had been expecting this, but it still hit me like a blow to the gut. "Those allegations are completely false," I replied quickly, my voice steady, though my blood was starting to boil. "Wilson Holdings upholds the highest ethical standards in all investment activities." Carmen Diaz didn't skip a beat. "So you deny that you secretly funded your son-in-law's company only to demote him and install your daughter in a leadership position during their divorce proceedings?" The audacity of the question took my breath away. Alex's fingerprints were all over this. He was going after me, trying to tear down everything I had built, just to salvage his bruised ego. "Ms. Diaz," I said, my voice ice cold, "this matter involves ongoing legal proceedings, and I am limited in what I can discuss. However, I can assure you that any leadership changes at Elevate were made based on documented financial mismanagement, not personal considerations. Your sources are wrong." The reporter pressed, "Would you be willing to share that documentation?" "Not at this time," I responded, my tone sharpening, "as it may be relevant to pending litigation. But I suggest you verify your sources carefully. False allegations of this nature could constitute defamation." I ended the call and immediately dialed our attorney, Matthew Greenberg, to alert him about the impending story. I wasn't surprised by the attack, but that didn't make it any easier to take. Next, I called Victor to alert Elevate's PR team and then Rachel. "He's going nuclear," Rachel said when I explained about the reporter's call. "The Denver Post has a much wider reach than the Business Journal. It's a sign of desperation." "Don't worry," I reassured her. "His allegations won't hold up to scrutiny. We've got the facts on our side." Rachel sighed. "Maybe not legally, but the court of public opinion is different. I'm going to have Elevate's PR team prepare a statement emphasizing my qualifications and the circumstances of the leadership change." "Good thinking," I said, proud of the way she was handling everything. "And Rachel, be careful. If he's willing to go this far publicly." "I know," she cut me off, her voice soft. I'm staying at Jessica's tonight. I'll be fine. I was about to protest when I heard the finality in her tone. It made sense, I realized. With everything going on, Rachel needed some space. I understood the weight of what she was going through. Her personal life was a mess, and now her professional life was under attack as well. She was standing on the precipice of an upheaval, and I couldn't help but worry. Robert, my husband, was deep in his study, the familiar smell of old books surrounding him. When I entered, I found him absorbed in a text, a quiet observer of the world around him. Rachel's staying with Jessica tonight, I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. He nodded, his calm demeanor matching the quiet of the room. She's reclaiming her space. That's good. I know, I murmured, sitting beside him. But I worry. About Alex. About Rachel's safety. About losing her. Robert set the book aside, his gaze steady on mine. You've always been a fighter, Linda. It's one of the things I love most about you. But sometimes fighting isn't what's needed. Then what is? I asked, genuinely seeking his wisdom. Trust, he said simply. Trust in Rachel's strength. Trust in the foundation we gave her. Trust that, even if Alex does his worst in the press or the court, the truth will eventually prevail. I leaned against him, taking comfort in his words. Maybe he was right. Rachel was strong, and she had a foundation built on honesty, integrity, and hard work. As much as I hated the pain of watching her struggle, I knew she had the resilience to weather this storm. I just hoped the storm was over soon. The phone call came just after 3 p.m. I was reviewing proposals at my desk, trying to stay focused despite the persistent undercurrent of anxiety that had followed me all day. The company was under siege, the press already starting to buzz with rumors, and I had just spoken to our attorney about the inevitable fallout. But this call was different. Is this Linda Wilson? A woman's voice asked, brisk and professional. Yes, this is Linda, I replied, trying to mask the unease creeping into my chest. This is Carmen Diaz, from the Denver Post. I'm working on a story about allegations against Wilson Holdings related to predatory investment practices targeting family-owned businesses. I'd like your comment. I froze. I had been expecting this. Alex's attempt at a media assault was inevitable. But hearing it from an actual reporter made it real. My stomach twisted with a mix of dread and fury. Those allegations are entirely false, I replied, my voice calm but firm. Wilson Holdings adheres to the highest ethical standards. We've always supported businesses with integrity. Carmen didn't skip a beat. So you deny secretly funding your son-in-law's company, only to demote him and install your daughter in his place during their divorce proceedings? The accusation was calculated. The framing of the question meant to drive a wedge between us, to paint me as the villain behind the curtain. I knew immediately this was Alex's doing. Ms. Diaz, I can't discuss the details of an ongoing legal matter, I said, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling beneath the surface. But I can tell you that any leadership changes at Elevate were a direct result of financial mismanagement, not personal reasons. The facts will speak for themselves. Would you be willing to provide that documentation? She pressed. Not at this time, I replied sharply. It's currently tied to litigation. But I suggest you verify your sources before you publish anything. False claims could have serious legal consequences. I ended the call, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my fingers hurt. My mind raced as I immediately dialed our attorney, Matthew Greenberg, preparing for the worst. He would need to respond swiftly to contain this fire before it spread any further. Next, I called Victor to alert Elevate's PR team and then Rachel. He's going nuclear, Rachel said, the weariness in her voice clear. The Denver Post has a much wider reach than the Business Journal. This is bigger than I thought. It's desperation, I reassured her. And it won't hold up. You just have to keep your focus on the facts, on the truth. This is his last attempt to regain control. Rachel sighed. Maybe not legally, but the court of public opinion is a different game altogether. I'll have Elevate's PR team prepare a statement highlighting my qualifications and the circumstances around the leadership change. I could hear the determination in her voice, but I still couldn't shake the worry gnawing at me. And Rachel, be careful, I said, my voice dropping. If he's willing to go this far publicly, he might escalate. I know, she said quietly. I'm staying with Jessica tonight. It's safer that way. We'll be fine. I didn't say much more. Rachel's decision to stay with Jessica made sense, but it also triggered a deep sense of protectiveness in me. The emotional and professional toll this situation was taking on her was becoming more evident with each passing day. I found Robert in his study, the same calm demeanor he always wore in times of crisis. Rachel's staying with Jessica tonight, I told him, needing to process the conversation. He nodded, his thoughts already working through the implications. She's reclaiming her space. That's good. I sighed, sitting down beside him. I know, but I'm still worried about her. About Alex. He's desperate and angry, and I'm not sure what he's capable of anymore. Robert set his book aside, turning to face me fully. You've always been a fighter, Linda. It's one of the things I love most about you. But sometimes, fighting isn't what's needed. Then what is? I asked, genuinely seeking his wisdom. The weight of everything was beginning to feel too heavy, and I didn't have the answers. Trust, he said simply. Trust in Rachel's strength. Trust in the foundation we gave her. Even if Alex does his worst, the truth will come out. It always does. I leaned against him, his words offering a rare moment of comfort. He was right. As much as I feared for her, I knew Rachel had the strength to get through this. The strength to survive whatever Alex threw her way. Later that evening, the first snippet of the Denver Post article appeared online. It wasn't much, just a teaser about corporate misconduct and a family business feud, but it was enough. I spent hours on the phone with Matthew Greenberg, discussing our options, our next steps. His advice was measured. Let the article run its course for now, and we'll address it directly once the full piece is published. We have the facts on our side, Linda. The truth is the best defense. The next morning, the full article was live. The headline read, Family Feud or Corporate Coup? Inside the Battle for Elevate Tech Solutions. I braced myself as I opened the piece, reading through it with growing tension. It was more balanced than I had feared. Alex's claims about predatory investment practices were presented alongside Elevate's defense. The leadership change was necessary for the company's survival, and Rachel's appointment had been driven by the company's needs, not personal motives. But it was the details of Alex's claims that caught my attention. The selective framing, the insinuations. He was trying to manipulate the narrative, casting himself as the wronged hero. I immediately called Rachel. Have you seen it? I asked, my voice tight. Reading it now, she replied, her tone calm. It's not as bad as we feared. They've verified some of the facts, and it doesn't make Alex look like the innocent victim he wants to be. Victor's security update confirmed my growing suspicion. Alex was gathering company data, making moves behind the scenes. It looks like he's preparing to launch a competitor using our proprietary information, I said to Robert later, the weight of the realization sinking in. Robert paused, considering. It would be illegal, Linda. Intellectual property theft, breach of contract, non-compete clauses. Alex won't get away with it. But since when has legality stopped Alex from doing what he wants? I countered. Robert's expression darkened, and we both knew the truth. Alex was ruthless, and I had no doubt he would stop at nothing to get what he wanted. The next morning, the storm had only intensified. A fresh wave of news hit, this time more aggressive, with Alex's claims growing louder and more damaging. The Denver Post article had gone viral, and Alex was only getting started. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was spiraling out of control. With Rachel's safety and Elevate's future hanging in the balance, I struggled to maintain a sense of calm. The calls kept coming, investors, reporters, worried partners, but nothing compared to the feeling of dread in my gut. By mid-morning, the next bombshell dropped. Rachel's voice came over the phone, calm but heavy with an undercurrent of concern. "Mom, you need to see this." "What is it?" I asked, bracing myself. "I'm sending you an email. Just read it." She hung up before I could respond. Seconds later, my phone pinged. I opened the email, my eyes scanning the subject line, "The truth about Elevate's hostile takeover." My heart skipped a beat. It was a message from Alex himself, sent to the entire Elevate staff, the board of directors, and our major clients. It was a manifesto, long-winded, full of accusations, painted in shades of betrayal and victimhood. It was everything I had feared, but it was worse than I imagined. Alex painted himself as a visionary founder, cast out by manipulative investors, claiming that Rachel had been swayed by me, that she had been manipulated into turning against him. But the most damaging part of the email was the snippet of board meeting discussions, selectively edited, of course, that made it look as if the decision to replace Alex had been premeditated, a hostile takeover. I didn't have to look at Robert to know the expression on his face. "How did he get these?" I asked aloud, horrified. Rachel was already 2 steps ahead. Board meetings are recorded for minutes, but only a few people have access to those. It would have been someone close to Alex. Robert, who had been studying the email with growing concern, looked up. "Is it possible he planted listening devices in the boardroom?" I nodded grimly. Possible, but unlikely. The IT department sweeps for that kind of thing regularly. But the unsettling feeling in my stomach told me that someone inside had given him access. "That's what worries me," Rachel added, her voice steady despite the fury behind her words. "He's always been good at playing the long game. But now, this is just desperation." "I think we have a mole," Victor said when I called him to discuss the email. "I'm already looking into it." James Thornton, our CFO, was one of Alex's earliest hires and has been suspiciously quiet today. He hasn't answered any calls. If I had to guess, he's involved. I sat there in stunned silence as Victor explained further. The financial data Alex had included in the email, the budget figures, the projections, had all come from James. He was the link between Alex's narrative and the board's confidential information. This was bigger than I'd realized. Not just a media war, not just a power struggle. This was corporate espionage on a scale I had never imagined. Rachel, to her credit, kept her focus. "I'm going to need a comprehensive communication strategy. I'll start reaching out to clients personally. I'm already drafting a response for the board. We need to control this narrative before Alex spins it any further." I watched her, impressed by her calm in the storm. She wasn't just fighting for the company, she was fighting for her own dignity, for our family's reputation. I had always known she was strong, but this was something different. She wasn't just reacting anymore, she was anticipating his next move and countering it before he even had a chance to make it. As the hours passed, we all worked in parallel, trying to stem the damage. I found myself speaking to clients, calming them, reassuring them that Elevate's direction was clear, that the leadership changes were based on sound financial reasoning, not petty personal motives. But there was still the underlying fear that Alex might escalate things further. He had always been a master manipulator, and now that he was cornered, I wasn't sure what he was capable of. Later that evening, Rachel called again, her tone lighter than I expected. "Mom, there's something I need to tell you. It's bad, but not as bad as I thought." "What happened?" "I found out that James Thornton, our CFO, resigned earlier today. He's gone, effective immediately. And he's been talking to Alex. But I think the board is finally seeing through the mess he's created." Relief washed over me, but it was brief. There was still so much left to untangle. Alex's campaign had backfired in some ways, but I knew it was far from over. And now, with James gone, I worried about the next shoe to drop. "Victor and I are meeting with the executive team first thing in the morning," Rachel continued. "We're going to lay out the facts, everything we've uncovered so far. It'll clear things up, but it'll also make it clear that Alex isn't just fighting for his career. He's trying to destroy Elevate. I felt a pang of guilt for not being able to shield Rachel from this. It was more than just business now. It was personal. And she was facing it with a level of strength that I had never imagined. The next morning brought fresh complications. We had barely begun to process the damage when Alex's next move became clear. Rachel and I had barely settled into our morning routine when a text from Victor arrived. Alex's lawyer just served us with a lawsuit. I immediately called Rachel. What's going on? They're claiming that I've deliberately interfered in my marriage, that I've been spreading false information to ruin Alex, she said, her voice surprisingly calm. The shock took a moment to settle in. It was a tactic meant to distract, to tie us up in legal battles while Alex went unchallenged in the public eye. The claims were absurd, but they were just another layer of his manipulation. We spent the next few hours reviewing the lawsuit, consulting with our attorneys. Matthew Greenberg assured us that the claims were flimsy, unlikely to hold up in court. But the pressure tactics were real, and I knew it was just another way Alex was trying to wear us down. When Rachel finally called again, I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. It's not going to work, Mom. We've got the evidence. Alex is trying to play the victim, but the truth is too strong. Her strength, once again, amazed me. Despite everything, she was holding the line. But that night, as I sat with Robert, I couldn't help but feel the weight of what Rachel was facing. I'm worried about her, I admitted, my voice breaking. She's handling this like a professional, but it's too much. She's carrying this on her own, and I'm afraid it'll break her. Robert's hand found mine. She's your daughter, Linda. She's more resilient than you give her credit for. You've raised her well. She'll make it through this. I nodded, but my concern didn't wane. Alex had gone too far. His lies, his manipulation, everything he had done to destroy Rachel's life, had to end. And I would fight to make sure of it. The next few weeks passed in a blur of meetings, legal wrangling, and media management. But every day, I saw more of Rachel's strength, her ability to lead in a crisis, and the truth finally making its way to the surface. But I also knew one thing. This was only the beginning. Alex would never give up. And neither would we. The days blurred into one another as we prepared for what felt like the inevitable next chapter of this battle. Despite Rachel's composed exterior, I could see the exhaustion creeping into her eyes. She had been running on adrenaline for weeks, facing crisis after crisis with unwavering resolve, but the weight of Alex's endless attacks was beginning to take its toll. Victor remained by her side, as committed to protecting her as he was to safeguarding Elevate's future. His calm and strategic thinking helped steady the team in the face of an increasingly hostile environment. But I knew he wasn't immune to the pressure either. There were moments when I saw the exhaustion in his face too, and the underlying tension between the two of them, unspoken yet palpable. It was a Thursday evening when everything began to feel like it was finally coming to a head. I just finished dinner with Robert, the quiet moments of routine offering some semblance of peace amidst the chaos, when my phone rang. Rachel. Mom. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the tension. It's about to get even messier. I immediately stood up from my chair, walking toward the patio to get some fresh air. What happened? Alex filed for an injunction. He's trying to block our non-compete agreement with Meridian and stop us from pursuing any legal action against him. The judge is considering it for tomorrow morning. We're getting hit from every angle now, Mom. I felt a surge of frustration, but Rachel's voice kept me grounded. We've already prepared a rebuttal. Victor's team is all over this, and we've got more than enough evidence to show that Alex's claims are baseless. I took a deep breath, still trying to keep the panic at bay. What can we do? Stay calm. We've got this. Just keep doing what you've been doing, keeping the investors reassured, keeping the team motivated. I'm not letting Alex get away with this. Not after everything he's done. Her words gave me some comfort, but a pit of unease settled in my stomach. The truth was, we hadn't seen the worst of what Alex could do. I knew he was capable of anything, especially now that his back was against the wall. The next morning, as we sat in the lawyer's office waiting for the court hearing to start, the tension in the air was palpable. Rachel, still as composed as ever, sat next to me, her hand gripping mine tightly. Robert sat across from us, his face unreadable, but I could see the same worry in his eyes. The judge called the case, and the room went silent as the legal teams presented their arguments. Alex's lawyer painted a picture of a founder betrayed, a visionary under siege. But Rachel, with Victor by her side, countered every claim with solid, irrefutable evidence. When it was Rachel's turn to speak, she stood tall, her voice unwavering as she addressed the court. Alex Parker didn't just mismanage a company. He systematically undermined it. He tried to sell its secrets to a competitor and tried to manipulate his way back into power after his financial failure. The evidence of his actions is clear. She laid it all out: board meeting recordings, financial mismanagement, the emails showing his communication with Meridian Ventures. She even produced evidence of his personal relationships and how they had been intertwined with his business dealings. Alex's lawyer tried to push back, claiming that the evidence was circumstantial and out of context, but it was clear to everyone in the room that the truth had caught up with him. It wasn't long before the judge made a ruling. The injunction is denied. The evidence presented shows that Mr. Parker's claims are not only unfounded but designed to harm the defendant's business. Any further legal action will be examined carefully. The courtroom erupted into murmurs of surprise and relief. Rachel and I exchanged a brief but knowing glance. We had won this round. But it wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. That evening, after the hearing, we gathered at the house. Robert had prepared dinner, but the room felt heavy despite the meal. We all sat around the table, trying to find normalcy in the midst of everything. Victor had been by our side through every decision, every strategic move. I noticed the subtle changes in the way he looked at Rachel. There was respect, admiration, and something more. It was a connection forged in fire, in battle. But it was also undeniable. Victor was a constant in Rachel's life now. What's next? I asked, breaking the silence as I took a sip of wine. Rachel's eyes were sharp, focused. We're going after the heart of this. The next move is to turn the tide in our favor. We're going public with the full extent of Alex's betrayal, every last detail. Victor nodded. We'll need to coordinate with the press, but this has to be handled delicately. We need to highlight how this is a business issue, not a personal one. If we do it right, Alex will be discredited once and for all. I could see the strategy coming together. It was bold, but it was the only way to prevent Alex from spinning his narrative further. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Rachel and Victor worked tirelessly, crafting their statement to the public and organizing an exclusive interview with a major news outlet. The plan was simple: clear, concise, and factual. We would show the world what Alex had done, and in doing so, we would free ourselves from his grasp once and for all. On the day of the interview, I sat at home, anxiously awaiting the outcome. The thought of Rachel standing in front of cameras, defending everything she had built, filled me with pride and fear in equal measure. It wasn't just her company on the line, it was her reputation, her future, and her heart. Finally, my phone rang. It was Rachel. "I did it, Mom," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was a quiet triumph in it. "It's over." "What happened?" I asked, barely able to keep the anxiety out of my voice. They ran the full story. Alex's betrayal is out there, and Meridian is distancing themselves from him. The truth is finally out. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. What about the lawsuit? The press? It's all falling apart for him. The investors are pulling back, the press is turning on him, and his legal team is scrambling. No one believes his lies anymore. I could hear the satisfaction in her voice, but also a deep sense of relief. Alex's reign of manipulation was over. The next few weeks were quiet, but in the best possible way. The storm had passed, and Elevate was moving forward. We had weathered the worst of the fallout, And now Rachel could finally focus on rebuilding what Alex had tried to destroy. Rachel's leadership was widely recognized, not just for her professional success, but for how she had faced an impossible situation with courage and integrity. The company, now under her leadership, began to thrive. New partnerships were formed, and Elevate secured significant funding to expand into new markets. And as for Alex, his fall was swift and complete. His name had become synonymous with deceit and betrayal, and his attempts to reinvent himself in a new market were futile. No one in the industry would touch him. Rachel and I spoke less about the past now. The war was over, and we were both learning to move forward. But sometimes, when I see her standing tall, speaking with conviction about the future, I remember the woman she had become, not because of her circumstances, but because she had always been strong, capable, and unwilling to let anyone define her. And for the first time in months, I was able to breathe. The future was wide open, and Rachel was leading the way. The truth had set her free. Weeks passed, and life slowly began to return to something resembling normal. The constant pressure that had weighed us down for so long started to lift, but the impact of everything that had transpired still lingered in the air, like the aftermath of a storm. Rachel had proven herself to be an unshakable force during the crisis. Her resilience, her focus, and her unwavering commitment to doing what was right had not only saved Elevate but had transformed it into something even greater than it had been before. Under her leadership, the company had flourished, and the industry took notice. Victor had stayed by her side every step of the way, not just as a colleague but as a confidant. Their partnership, both personal and professional, had deepened in ways neither of them had anticipated. I could see how much they valued each other, not just for their talents but for the respect they shared, the foundation of mutual trust they had built in the trenches. One evening, as I sat on the patio with Robert, the quiet hum of life around us felt almost foreign after the chaos. Robert, as always, was in his element, tending to his garden, a place where he found peace and clarity. I watched him for a moment, appreciating how his calm presence had been a steadying influence through all of this. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" I said, breaking the silence. "We have," he replied, setting his gardening tools down and taking a seat beside me. "It's been a hard road, but I think Rachel's stronger for it." "So are you." I smiled, a quiet sense of pride swelling inside me. I didn't want her to have to go through all of that. But I'm so proud of who she's become. "I think she's proud of you too," Robert said, his gaze thoughtful. "She's learned from the best." I glanced at him, a sense of comfort settling over me. "I think she's learned more from the worst, honestly. But that's how strength is forged." The summer sun was setting, casting a warm golden hue over the garden. It felt like a moment of reflection, the kind that only came after a major shift, when you could finally see how far you'd come. The following morning, Rachel called me as she was getting ready for work. It was becoming a regular habit, her checking in, and I couldn't say I minded. Her life was no longer in the whirlwind it had once been. The lawsuit, the media frenzy, and the constant threats from Alex were behind her now. It was time for her to rebuild, and rebuild she had. "I just wanted to let you know that the board meeting went well," Rachel said. "We're in the final stages of securing that new partnership with the sustainable tech company I've been working on. We're going to be expanding Elevate's portfolio into a completely new industry." "That's fantastic news," I said, feeling a surge of pride. "You're building something amazing, Rachel." She laughed softly. "It's all coming together. And I think I'm finally learning how to trust the process. No more shortcuts. No more pretending things are what they're not." "And you're doing it all on your own terms," I added, my heart full. "That's what matters the most." "Exactly. No more living in anyone else's shadow," she replied, her tone filled with a quiet confidence. "I'm ready for the next step. And I'm glad I'm not doing it alone." I could hear the hint of something deeper in her voice, a realization perhaps, or maybe even a sense of peace. In all the years I had watched her, this was the most grounded I had ever seen her. The weight of Alex's betrayal had somehow set her free in a way none of us could have predicted. Later that week, Rachel and Victor came over for dinner. The two of them had become a familiar sight at our house, their bond growing stronger by the day. While they hadn't officially labeled it anything yet, it was clear that something more was developing between them. I wasn't sure if it was the end of a long journey or the beginning of something new, but I could see how much they relied on each other. "Everything's going well at Elevate?" Robert asked as he set dinner on the table. "Better than I expected," Rachel replied, taking her seat. "There's still a lot of work to be done, but I think we've got the foundation we need to make a real impact." Victor, who had been quieter than usual, nodded. "It's been a collaborative effort, but Rachel's leadership is what's taking us to the next level. Her vision is exactly what the company needed." Rachel smiled at him, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them before she turned her attention back to us. "I couldn't have done it without everyone here, without all of you supporting me. I know it wasn't easy, but we made it through." Dinner was relaxed, filled with easy conversation and laughter. There was no talk of Alex, no more focus on the past. It was all about the future now, the projects they were working on, and the plans they had for Elevate. Months passed, and it became clear that Rachel was thriving in ways I hadn't fully understood before. She was no longer just my daughter, the woman who had been struggling with a marriage that was never what it seemed. She was a force in her own right, carving out her path, no longer defined by the past or anyone else's expectations. One evening, as we were sitting outside after dinner, Rachel turned to me. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what you said to me during the whole mess with Alex. About living authentically, and facing the truth no matter how painful it is." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I get it now. I used to think that success was about being the best, about proving I could do it. But now, I know it's about being true to yourself. About making decisions for the right reasons. Not for anyone else, not to prove anything to anyone." Her words made my heart swell with pride. This was the woman I had always known she could become. "And I'm doing it," she added softly, almost as if to herself. "I'm finally doing it for me." It was that evening as I watched Rachel drive off with Victor, the golden light of the setting sun catching in her hair, that I realized just how much had changed. This wasn't the same person who had walked into this house months ago, weary and broken. This was a woman fully alive, fully aware of her worth, and ready to face whatever the world had in store. Robert squeezed my hand as we watched them leave. "She's going to be just fine." I looked up at him, feeling a profound sense of peace. "She already is." And in that moment, I knew that whatever came next, Rachel was ready for it. She was no longer just living up to expectations. She was creating her own future, on her own terms, with the strength to carry it through. The past was behind us, the storm had passed, and the future was wide open. And for the first time in months, I could breathe easy, knowing that my daughter had not only survived the chaos but had emerged from it stronger than I ever could have imagined. The truth had set her free. And now, she was truly free to live her life, unapologetically and authentically, with the courage to face whatever lay ahead.